2020, the whole world has stopped. I mean, everything. You guys remember it. Flights grounded, hotels empty, borders shut. And at that time, I had finally made it out here. I'm locked down in the Dominican Republic with my wife because I wasn't about to let her go through something like COVID-19 alone here. So one day I came across an article in Dominican Today, and something in it just kind of, just stopped me cold, like in place. And I'm sitting there looking at this like, what? It said a Dominican businessman, one of the most powerful men in tourism on the island, basically issued a warning to his own government.
He said, if the Dominican Republic does not get its tourism sector reactivated by July 1st, if those flights are not back in the air, this country will be out of competition. You will lose your slot. Other Caribbean destinations are already announcing their reopening dates. If the DR isn't ready, the tour operators will move on without you. And with hurricane season coming, you might not see real tourist traffic again until next year.
And they put it in motion. The government moved. July 1st, those airports open, every airport in the country, all at once. Not by region, all of it. Mm-hmm. Like someone flipped a switch. I remember showing my wife the article, and we're wondering, who are these people?
Right.
What organization, what body, what group has enough power that a sovereign nation will reorganize its entire COVID response timeline around a deadline they set?
And we didn't have an answer that day, but we decided to look into it. And what we found took us all the way back to 1925.
To understand who controls tourism today, you have to understand where this whole system came from. And it goes back further than most people expect.
Mm-hmm. After World War I, Europe was in ruins. Countries were broke, borders were redrawn. The nations that survived started asking, how do we rebuild? How do we move money across borders again? How do we get people traveling?
In 1925, in The Hague, the first International Congress of Official Tourist Organizations was held. Government tourism bodies from across Europe sitting in a room together, trying to coordinate international travel for the first time.
And at this point, it's just coordination, right? Countries talking to each other about how to make travel easier.
That's all it looks like on the surface. But here's where it starts to get interesting. In 1934, this group formalized itself into an official union, and they gave it a name, the International Union of Official Tourist Propaganda Organizations.
Wait, propaganda?
Propaganda. That was literally the name. Now, to be fair, the word propaganda in the 1930s didn't carry the same weight it does today. It just meant the promotion of a particular agenda. But still, the organization that would eventually become the global body overseeing international tourism started life as a propaganda union.
So from the beginning, this was about controlling the narrative around where people travel.
From the beginning, and it only grows from there. World War II ends, international travel starts picking back up. And this organization restructures itself, drops the word propaganda, rebrands as the International Union of Official Travel Organizations, IUOTO. Now it's framed as a tool for global recovery, peace through tourism, people-to-people connection. Sounds noble.
And the membership, it's growing at this point.
Over 100 national tourist organizations as full members, 88 more as associates. This is the only organization in the world grouping together government tourism bodies from across the globe. And by the 1960s, they're starting to realize we need more power than a non-governmental organization can have. We need to be intergovernmental. We need to be part of the United Nations system.
So they go to the UN.
September 27th, 1970, Mexico City. The General Assembly of IUOTO votes to transform itself into something new, the World Tourism Organization. And that date, September 27th, becomes World Tourism Day, celebrated every year.
So now, it's not just a club of tourism boards, it's an intergovernmental body.
It takes 5 more years for the statutes to be ratified. 51 countries have to sign on. January 2nd, 1975, it officially comes into force. Headquarters, Madrid, Spain. The Spanish government provided the initial infrastructure.
In 2003, the final step. The United Nations General Assembly formally recognizes it as a specialized UN agency. Same status as the World Health Organization. Same status as UNESCO. And now, the UNWTO, the United Nations World Tourism Organization.
And in 2024, they rebranded again, calling it UN Tourism now. Simpler, more visible, more modern, same organization, same structure, same power. Here's where we need to slow down, because most people hear United Agency and they assume it's just governments talking to governments. And that's partially true, but only partially.
UN tourism has 3 tiers of membership. And when you understand all 3, the picture starts to look very different.
Tier 1, full member states, 160 countries. These are sovereign nations that pay dues, vote in the General Assembly every 2 years, and help set global tourism policy. Your Dominican Republic is in here. Most of the world is in here.
And who's not in here?
The United States pulled out in 1996. Congress stopped funding the U.S. Travel and Tourism Administration and walked away. The world's #1 tourist destination decided this body wasn't worth the dues.
The #1 tourist destination in the world? Not a member?
Not a full member. Australia walked out in 2015, said the organization gave them poor value for money. Canada left after a controversy we'll get to in a minute. 17 countries have withdrawn at various points. Some came back, some didn't.
Tier 2, associate members. These are territories that aren't fully sovereign. Places like Aruba, Hong Kong, and Puerto Rico. They can participate, but they need their governing nation to co-sign their membership. Puerto Rico can't just decide to join. The United Nations has to approve it on their behalf. And the US isn't even really a full member, so there's that.
There is that. So Puerto Rico is in a UN tourism body that their own governing nation opted out of. Wrap your heads around that. Tier 3, this is one that made us stop and read twice. UN tourism describes itself as, and this is their own language, the only UN agency that includes private sector members in its governance structure.
Private sectors? As in corporations? Over 500 of them called affiliate members. For profit companies, hotels, airlines, tour operators, banks, insurance companies, and even universities.
And they don't just write a check and get a plaque on the wall. They sit in working groups. They advise the Secretary General. They help shape the organization's program of work.
Google is in a working group inside the United Nations Tourism Agency.
Google is a leading member. Booking.com is a member. The companies that profit most from people deciding where to travel, they have a seat at the table where global tourism policy is discussed.
And this is not like a conspiracy theory. That's just how it's set up for real.
That's just how it's set up. Written in their documentation, on their own website. Nobody hid this. Nobody had to dig for it. It's just that nobody ever explained it to the regular people. So now we know this body exists. Governments and corporations in the same room. But what do they actually control?
Right.
Can they really move tourism traffic towards some countries and away from others?
Because it's not like they're sending people to specific destinations direct.
Not directly.
Yeah.
But here's what they do control. And this is where it gets real.
First, the data. UN Tourism is the official global scorekeeper for international tourism. They track arrivals, receipts, tourism contribution to GDP for every country in the world. The World Tourism Barometer is the number that every government, every investor, every media outlet quotes when they talk about which destinations are winning and which destinations are losing.
If your country isn't being counted accurately or isn't being counted at all, you are invisible to the global tourism market. And who decides how the counting works?
The United Nations General Assembly officially recognized UN Tourism as the appropriate organization to collect, analyze, publish, and standardize all global tourism statistics. They basically own the scoreboard. They make all the rules for how the game is measured.
Second, market intelligence. UN Tourism produces reports on which source markets are growing, which countries are sending the most tourists, where they're going, what they're spending. Countries that are deeply engaged with UN tourism get technical assistance. They get access to these reports. They get help building tourism investment strategies.
And countries that can't afford to engage in that level, they get less help, fall behind in the data, and fall behind in the minds of tour operators who use that data to decide where they send their clients.
Third, and this is the one that most people miss, travel advisories. UN Tourism doesn't issue travel advisories directly. Individual governments do that. But UN Tourism's own global code of ethics actually has language about how those advisories should be issued. It says governments have the right to warn their citizens, but they also have a responsibility not to damage host countries' tourism industries with warnings that are exaggerated or disproportionate.
So there are guidelines for how countries are allowed to warn their citizens about visiting other countries.
Guidelines, not legally binding, but when the U.S. State Department issues level 3 or level 4 warnings for a destination, tourism to that destination drops immediately. Airlines reduce routes, tour operators pull packages, hotels see cancellations.
And a small island nation has no way to fight that. No formal mechanism, no appeal process. You just absorb it and hope it gets lifted.
Now, if this organization is the steward of global tourism, the body that's supposed to make sure this industry is run ethically and transparently, you'd expect it to have a clean record.
And does it?
Well, in 2009, the United Nations Joint Inspection Unit, the UN's own internal watchdog, published a report on the World Tourism Organization. And it found that as of that report, the agency did not possess any internal audit, inspection, evaluation, investigation, or monitoring capabilities.
An organization influencing the policies that shape where billions of tourism dollars flow around the world, and as of that report, has no mechanism to audit itself.
None. And nobody outside of policy circles ever heard about it.
And then there's Robert Mugabe.
In 2012, the UNWTO endorsed the president of Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe, as a tourism leader, co-hosting the General Assembly, presenting him with an open letter, positioning him as a champion of tourism development.
Robert Mugabe, who was under a travel ban at the time and couldn't legally travel to most of the countries whose tourists he was supposedly going to attract, and he was being positioned as the global tourism figure.
Well, Canada withdrew from the organization around that same time. The international backlash was immediate.
So the UNWTO then says it wasn't an official title, that the letter was sent to dozens of heads of state, that no formal ambassadorship was conferred. Which, I mean, it may be technically true, but a man with blood on his hands was standing on their stage. And, I mean, they put him there.
17 countries have withdrawn from this organization at various points. Some came back, some didn't. And Russia was suspended in 2022, the same day they announced their own withdrawal. After the invasion of Ukraine, geopolitics determines who has a voice in global tourism governance.
You're in or you're out, based on who the room decides to belong.
So now, let's go back to where this started. The article I read that morning back in 2020. Because now we can see it differently.
Because now we know who the players are. So Frank Rainieri issues his warning. July 1st, or you lose your season.
At almost the same moment, IATA, the International Air Transport Association, the global body that represents the world's airlines, contacts the president of the Dominican Republic's COVID Commission directly.
And tells him the protocols that DR has implemented at its airports need to align with recommendations issued by the International Civil Aviation Organization, the ICAO, which is another organization that most people have never heard of.
Right. IATA represents over 360 airlines worldwide, roughly 85% of global air traffic. If IATA signals to its member airlines that there's a protocol problem at your airports, those airlines have cover to reduce or suspend routes. And for a country where tourism is a significant driver of the entire economy, that's a matter of survival.
And at the same time, the tour operators are also making their move.
At the same time, the major foreign tour operators, the companies that package and sell Dominican vacations to Americans and Europeans, go directly to the incoming tourism minister, David Collado, and tell him the testing policy at the airports is creating problems for their business.
If tests are required, they should happen before passengers travel, not when they land. So the Dominican government is hearing it from all three directions simultaneously.
Their own business elite, the Global Airline Association, and the foreign companies that sell this country to the world. All in the same window of time, all pointing at the same deadline.
And the government moved. July 1st, every airport in the DR opened. All at once, not region by region. The decision was made to open the entire country simultaneously.
Remember that. And 2 years later, the UNWTO recognized the Dominican Republic as the #1 country in the world in tourism recovery.
So basically, they played the game.
And won.
Yeah. But they had to play the game.
Here's what we know for certain after going through all this. There is a 100-year-old system built by European nations after World War I, absorbed into the United Nations, opened to private corporations, enforced through airline access, tour operator catalogs, and travel advisories that shapes where the world's tourists go.
It's not like a secret society. It's not this shadow government. It's documented. It is on their website. It's in UN resolutions.
The countries with the most money have the most influence. The corporations that profit from tourism have bought a seat at the table where tourism policy is shaped.
And the nations that depend most on tourism, many of them smaller, many of them in the developing world, have the least say in how the system runs.
The Dominican Republic didn't fall in 2020. They responded, they adapted, and they won.
But only after hearing from Frank Rainieri and IATA and the tour operators.
Only after the system applied a little pressure.
Mm-hmm. This is my country, and I mean, I was born here, and I had no idea that any of this existed until we started digging. We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one. If this opened your eyes to something that you didn't know before, just please share it with us. We'd love to hear it.
And you know what else? We want you to like
and subscribe. That wasn't on time at all, my boy. You want to try it again?
No,
you have to say, we want you to go.
I know, I was about to. And you know what else? We want you to like and subscribe. Okay, do your part again, then we go right into it.
No, we could go right into it.
No.
Okay.
Gotta be smooth.
Okay, wait. We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one of them. We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one of them. And if this opened your eyes to something that you didn't know before, please share it with us. We'd love to hear about it.
And you know what else? We want you to like and subscribe. Love, purpose, and passports. Peace.
Bye.
It was hard.
Woo!
Talking about we want to do documentaries. Shit.